To win a war, it is critically important to have soldiers who are truly willing to fight for you. However, it seems no one told that to Russian President Vladimir Putin. Putin believes he can mask the brutality of what's happening in Ukraine by offering massive salaries, but even those financial promises are no longer convincing Russian soldiers to keep fighting. They want to stop, and Putin appears unable to make them believe that sacrificing their lives horribly to complete his special military operation is a good idea. Mass surrenders have erupted in the Russian army as Putin's troops refuse to fight. Putin is losing control over his own military, giving Ukraine a significant advantage as the war enters 2026. Comment number 2 if you support Ukraine, number 3 if you support Russia, and number 4 if you love peace. According to a report from United 24 Media on December 31st, data released by Ukraine's Coordination Headquarters for the Treatment of Prisoners of War shows a staggering number of Russian soldiers have been captured since Putin launched the invasion of Ukraine. Even more notable is that 2025 recorded the highest number of Russian soldier surrenders ever. So how many Russian soldiers has Ukraine captured? The figure has surpassed 10,000 and is still rising in under 4 years, a massive number that raises questions about why this is happening. One of the biggest reasons is that Ukraine has established a project to assist Russian soldiers in surrendering, no matter where they are on the front lines. This program is called I Want to Live, and it is one of many examples of the ingenuity Ukraine has shown since Putin initiated his war of aggression. The I Want to Live program offers a highly appealing proposition to Russian soldiers who want to escape the war. Visiting the project's official website, one can immediately see multiple communication channels that Russian soldiers can use to connect with the program, including a live chatbot on the site, links to a Telegram channel, and a contact page to send messages to those who could become their Ukrainian captors. The genius of this idea lies in the fact that Ukraine not only provides a peaceful surrender opportunity for Russian forces, but also makes it as easy as possible for Putin's soldiers to abandon the fight. Just a quick message and everything gets underway. The program also promises full compliance with the Geneva Conventions on the Treatment of Prisoners of War, a condition that many Russian soldiers do not receive even within their own army, making surrender a more attractive option. Surrendered soldiers are also guaranteed detention in decent conditions, with 3 meals a day, medical care, and the ability to contact their families. According to shocking but not necessarily untrue reports from December, some Russian soldiers were so hungry that they planned to eat their comrades, illustrating just how dire the food situation is in the Russian army in Ukraine. The I Want to Live program capitalizes on this reality while also offering captured soldiers the choice to return to Russia through prisoner exchange programs, or if they prefer, to seek refuge in Ukraine or another European country after the war ends. In other words, some Russian soldiers are not just surrendering, but actively escaping Putin's control. It is the I Want to Live program itself that released the data shared by United 24 Media on Telegram, highlighting the growing trend of surrenders among Putin's fighting forces. The Telegram statement reads, "The number of Russian soldiers surrendering increases every year. In 2025 alone, the number of captured Russian servicemen exceeded the total for 2022 and 2023 combined. On average, 60 to 90 servicemen of the Russian armed forces surrender each week, peaking at 350 per week in August 2024. Since June 2023, Russian soldiers have consistently been captured in greater numbers than Ukrainian servicemen held in Russia." This data is highly noteworthy. According to United 24 Media, the majority of those captured, about 83%, are low-ranking soldiers, typically infantry and other low-grade personnel tasked with charging straight into Ukrainian drones with little hope of survival. Only 13% are non-commissioned officers, and a very small 3% are officers. Not all of these soldiers were captured voluntarily, indicating that Russia rarely places officers in positions where they can be easily captured, instead leaving low-ranking troops, put bluntly but accurately, as cannon fodder to put themselves in Ukraine's sights. More interestingly, about 7% of the 10,000 captured, or roughly 700 people, are identified as foreign mercenaries from 40 different countries. Each week, 2 to 3 new foreign fighters are discovered. Contract soldiers in general make up the bulk of those captured, about 76%, many of them from Russian prisons or private military companies. Mobilized personnel account for 19%, and conscripts, the group Putin once claimed would not be sent into combat when he launched the war, make up about 5%. Clearly, Putin was not telling the truth. As long as you have legs and can hold a gun, you qualify to die in Ukraine. Through interviews with captured soldiers, Ukraine has discovered that Russia employs deceptive and sometimes coercive recruitment campaigns. Many soldiers have criminal records or circumstances that make them easily lured by the lucrative contracts offered by the Kremlin. Nearly a quarter of the 10,000 captured soldiers report being forced or tricked into joining the Russian army. This reveals that 1 in every 4 Russian soldiers truly does not want to be there, as they were compelled or misled about their destination. For a leader who demands absolute loyalty from his troops, Putin keeps giving them reasons to leave him, starting with recruiting those who do not even want to join. Putin also favors those with criminal records, with 40% of captured soldiers having criminal histories ranging from theft, assault, drug-related crimes, to murder. About 38% of captured soldiers were unemployed before joining the Russian army, 30% did not complete high school, and only 7% have a university degree. This paints a picture of Russia's recruitment strategy. Using coercion and deception, Putin targets the most vulnerable groups in Russian society, especially the undereducated, perhaps because he believes they are more easily enticed by rubles due to lacking other ways to earn the money promised by the Russian military. For criminals, the choice is between staying in prison or heading to the Ukrainian battlefield, and this says a lot about Russia's prison system when so many choose Ukraine. Additionally, there are those who are ill. According to United 24 media, Ukrainian officials report that hundreds of captured soldiers suffer from chronic diseases such as HIV/AIDS, tuberculosis, diabetes, and mental illnesses. These figures confirm many prior rumors and reports about the Russian army. For instance, The Telegraph reported in September 2025 that Dmytro Zhmylo from Ukraine's Center for Security and Cooperation revealed Russia is using diseased soldiers to assault the besieged city of Pokrovsk. These soldiers often have the illnesses mentioned in the "I Want to Live" data, and are even forced to wear armbands to identify them as infected soldiers that Russia can use as cannon fodder in assaults. Zhmylo told The Telegraph that the infected units are equipped similarly to other Russian army units, but their supply levels are the same and quite low. The only difference from Russia's healthy servicemen is the special markings, specifically the presence of distinctive armbands. Regarding the large number of undereducated soldiers on the captured list, this reflects what the BBC calls the transformation of war into a social ladder in Russia. In January 2025, the BBC noted that financial incentives are Russia's primary recruitment tool. New recruits are promised upfront payments up to 450% higher than before, along with salaries 600% above the average Russian income. That is a very tempting carrot on Russia's stick. However, Putin does not tell those at the bottom of Russian society that this stick often leads them into the sights of Ukrainian drones. The Russian leader completes the deception by positioning military service as an opportunity for soldiers to climb into society's elite. For the undereducated and criminals, who make up the majority of those captured according to Ukraine's reports, that is a highly appealing offer. The BBC quoted Putin in December 2024, quote, "We will certainly continue to rely on such people in the future. They are the real, genuine elite and the pride of the country." End quote. It is not hard to see why many from these groups sign up. When their alternatives are a life of poverty, a Russian jail cell, or a slow death from illness, a large payout and the promise of becoming society's elite in Russia is hard to resist. However, that is likely another lie, as evidenced by the 1.22 million Russian soldiers who have become casualties in Putin's war, including the roughly 10,000 that Ukraine reports having captured. You cannot become elite if you have been shot dead or blown up by a Ukrainian drone.
Russia also employs foreign mercenaries, and Putin seems willing to abandon them along with injured soldiers once they are used up. United 24 media states that the data indicates Russia often prioritizes exchanging prisoners who are ethnic Russians, held for short periods and without serious injuries. The injured are not worth Putin's effort, as they cannot be sent back to the front lines. If this seems harsh, United 24 media further reports that Ukrainian officials say at least 237 returned prisoners of war to Russia have died or gone missing in Ukraine after being redeployed. Some others have been captured a second time, showing that Russia only takes back relatively healthy soldiers and then sends them back to the battlefield to die. For foreign mercenaries, they have almost no chance of returning to Russia, even if they want to. This clearly demonstrates Putin's attitude toward the foreign soldiers fighting in his war.
According to Australia's ABC News in December, Russia has been recruiting foreign mercenaries through social media campaigns, offering large salaries similar to those for domestic contract soldiers, even dangling the prospect of Russian citizenship. By the end of 2025, Russia was trying to fill its growing manpower gaps by recruiting foreigners. ABC reports that defense tech firm Open Minds revealed that one-third of the contract announcements posted by the Russian government now target foreigners. The number of such posts reached about 4,500 per month by mid-2025, compared to just around 100 a year and a half earlier. This says a lot about Putin's manpower situation. Russian citizens are starting to realize what really awaits them in Ukraine, or simply there are no longer enough ethnic Russians from the groups that Russian recruiters target. So foreigners become the option, and these individuals will face harsh realities upon arriving in Ukraine. Russia's refusal to take them back in prisoner exchanges is even a blessing compared to the fate of many other non-Russians in that army. 3 meals, a bed, and the ability to call home is paradise compared to becoming meat for the grinder. According to a January 12th report from The Telegraph, Russia is now forcing Africans to join its army and sending them on suicide missions. Ukraine's ambassador to South Africa, Oleksandr Sherba, stated that the way Russia treats South African contract soldiers reflects Putin's contempt for all troops hired from the continent. He said, "There may be all kinds of enticement campaigns in Africa, but once Africans come to this war, they just become meat for the grinder." Russia looks at Africa through an imperial lens. In other words, from Putin's perspective, Africa is little more than a resource to exploit, and this may make Russia even more willing to lie to get more contract soldiers from the continent. These soldiers have almost no chance of receiving the rewards Russia promises, making capture by Ukraine often their best way out. This imperial attitude exists within the Russian army as well as at the highest levels of leadership. The Telegraph reports that a video released on January 11 shows a group of African soldiers singing a song in their native language in a snow-covered forest. The Russian soldier filming comments, "Look how many disposable people here," before declaring that they will sing differently when deployed to the front lines. That is inexcusable callousness, not justified by the fog of war, and it seems to come from the top. Russian soldiers captured by Ukraine reveal forms of coercion, deception, and outright contempt for the very people Putin sends to fight. That is no way to boost morale. But sadly, Putin is not seeking high morale. He wants absolute loyalty in exchange for the money Russia offers, a loyalty that lasts until Russian soldiers are willing to die on his command. More than 10,000 and counting are either unwilling or captured while trying to surrender. Many more may follow if the "I want to live" claim that Ukraine captured more Russian soldiers in 2025 than the total for 2022 and 2023 combined is accurate.
That is another trend. Increasingly, Russian soldiers are falling into Ukrainian hands, showing more than ever that they are ready to raise the white flag to escape the horrors Putin imposes on them.
So, what does all this mean for Ukraine? Every Russian soldier who surrenders means Russia loses someone they pay handsomely and rely on to participate in assaults on Ukrainian defenses. Interfax reports that the largest numbers of Russian prisoners were captured in the Pokrovsk and Bakhmut areas of Donetsk Oblast, along with Kursk Oblast and the Polohi area of Zaporizhia Oblast. These are all regions where Russia has suffered heavy losses in the war against Ukraine, and surrendering soldiers only exacerbate those losses by weakening the assaults Russia launches. Another notable point is that Ukraine is now capturing more Russian soldiers than Ukrainian servicemen held by Russia, which should not happen. Typically, the attacking force captures more prisoners because they advance, seize territory, and encircle the enemy. However, Russia's moves are so inept that their soldiers repeatedly fail to isolate Ukrainian defenders, often getting trapped in Ukrainian-designed ambushes or establishing weak positions that lead to encirclement and capture.
Ukraine also gains leverage from the large number of Russian soldier surrenders. They understand this, and that is why the I Want to Live program was created. The Irregular Warfare Initiative even calls this campaign a new age form of psychological warfare. By replacing traditional psyops methods with mobile technology and social media, Ukraine can now reach enemy soldiers through their own smartphones, sowing fear, spreading confusion, and encouraging surrender. In other words, Ukraine is using technology to plant the idea of surrender in the minds of Russian soldiers, who previously might not have realized surrender was an option, let alone that they would be treated better than by their own commanders and officers.
In terms of leverage, capturing more Russian soldiers allows Ukraine to bring back large numbers of its own servicemen in prisoner exchanges. This happened in January 2024, when Ukraine repatriated 230 of its captured soldiers in exchange for 248 prisoners returned to Russia. Additionally, every captured or surrendered Russian soldier knows something. Ukraine can learn about Russian training methods from the low-ranking soldiers they capture, or about supply shortages in the areas where soldiers were taken, or the scale of basic training classes, thereby gauging what to expect from future Russian assaults. In the rare cases of capturing officers, Ukraine can even learn about entire operations to counter them. Intelligence alone is valuable enough to justify the existence of programs like I Want to Live. The damage that data from this organization and Ukraine's coordination headquarters for the treatment of prisoners of war inflicts on Russia's image as a competent fighting force is a small but worthwhile bonus. Putin cannot afford to have so many of his soldiers surrendering to Ukraine. Russia has faced a host of manpower issues, the biggest being that Ukraine is now eliminating more Russian soldiers than the country can replace through recruitment. Something serious has broken in Russia, and it is helping to loosen Putin's grip on his own military. Comment number 2 if you support Ukraine, number 3 if you support Russia, and number 4 if you love peace.